Good evening. Okay, so at past forums, the sound system has not always worked properly. So far, I think we are off to a great start. What do you guys think? Okay, so we're going to start this evening with the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't actually know where the flag is. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, good evening and welcome to Springfield. My name is Margaret Gillis, and I'm here as a grassroots group leader. I welcome you to the Union County Congressional District 7 Candidate Forum. I would like to begin by thanking the organizations that made this forum possible. It was a cooperation between grassroots groups in Union County and the Union County Democratic Committee. Specifically, I want to recognize Action Together Union County, Westfield 2020, Cranford Rising, Summit Area Indivisible, NJ7 Forward, the Union County Democratic Committee, Acting Chairman Colleen Marr, and Nick Fixmer. Without a cooperative effort from all of these groups of people, this forum this evening would not have been possible. I would also like to recognize our guests, members of the Union County Board of Freeholders, Democratic municipal chairs, and committee members who are here this evening, and the Springfield Board of Education, who graciously made this facility available to us this evening. So seated here are the 7 candidates running for the Democratic nomination to be our new congressional representative in the 7th District. They are Peter Jacob, Gautam Joas, Tom Malinowski, Lisa Mandelblatt, Dave Pringle, Scott Salmon, and Linda Weber. I have a couple of housekeeping announcements. First of all, no food or drink in the theater. Please take a moment and silence your devices. Since the sound system is working, we're sure to hear them. And we'd like you to know that we will be streaming this. It will be available online as it progresses on the Union County Democratic Committee website, and then also to the associated Facebook pages for the grassroots groups. We ask that no flash photography happen during the event. There's also an announcement came out earlier today that Leonard Lance is having a town hall on Saturday morning, so if you'd like to refresh your memory on why we need to open our office. So the forum format will be each candidate will have an opportunity to make an opening and closing statement of 2 minutes each. The candidates were asked to submit brief video responses to the same 5 questions. Tonight they will be asked a series of questions which were drawn from their video responses. They will have 1.5 minutes or 90 seconds for their answers. There will be no rebuttals, and the moderator may ask follow-up questions. If you wish to watch the videos and haven't had a chance yet, they're available at unioncountydems.com and will be for the foreseeable future. So without further delay, I'd like to introduce Marcy Bendelli, the co-founder of Westfield 2020.
Hi everybody, thank you for coming tonight on this rainy, sleety, horrible evening. It shows your commitment to flipping the seat, and I'm really excited about that. Yes, so I'm the co-founder of 2020, and I just thank everybody for being here tonight. I am very excited to introduce our moderator, Sally Avalenda. Sally Avalenda is a co-executive Executive Director of New Jersey 11 for Change, a member of the group's Board of Directors and a member of the group's founding steering committee. Until May 2017, Ms. Avalenda was employed as Senior Vice President and Assistant General Counsel at a community bank in northern New Jersey. Ms. Avalenda left her position after almost 7 years with the company shortly after her congressman, Rodney Frelinghuysen, sent a fundraising letter to a member of her employer's board of directors calling attention to her activities with NJ 11 for Change. Ms. Avalenda received her JD from University of Pennsylvania Law School in 1998 and her BA cum laude from New York University in 1994. I just want to add that Mr. Frelinghuysen resigned, will not be running for the seat. And we thank Siley and NJ11 for Change for pressuring him to the point where he cannot run anymore. So thank you, Sally. So without further ado, Siley Avalenda.
Good evening, Union County. I want to start the night off with a quote, just to get you all in the right frame of mind. Democracy cannot succeed unless those who express their choice are prepared to choose wisely. The real safeguard of democracy, then, is education. The fact that you are all here tonight on a night of terrible weather, and the people at home are watching this instead of streaming Netflix, that is a testament to your commitment to educate yourselves and to choose wisely in this next election. We are all here because we recognize it is our duty and our job to safeguard democracy. To paraphrase an oft-quoted refrain, if not us, who? And if not now, when? It's no longer acceptable for us not to use our voices and our votes. It's no longer acceptable for us to stay passive. And it's no longer acceptable to have representatives who refuse to listen to the interests of their own constituents. Our representatives are hired every 2 years to represent us. They are hired by people. They are not hired by corporations. It is our job to hold them accountable, and it is our job to choose them wisely. You have a slate of 7 candidates to choose from, and we'll hear from each of them tonight. In the interest of not having them run on alphabetical order, since it's probably been done before, I had my 7-year-old assistant draw the numbers. He enjoys scrambling 1 through 7 several times. So that we could start the opening statements with Daphne.
Thank you to all the grassroots groups that organized this. Thanks to all of you for being here. I'll start by just explaining the answer to a question I get frequently. My name is Gautam Jois. People ask what my name means. It's from an ancient Indian language called Sanskrit, and it translates approximately to Congressman from the 7th District. I'd like you to imagine, if you will, the following. 2 young African-American men are driving home one night. Robbie Tolan is in the passenger seat. His cousin, Anthony, is driving. They pull into Robbie's parents' driveway, and a police officer follows them in. Complete mistake, he thinks the car is stolen, and he signals for backup. Robbie and his cousin do everything right. They follow the officer's instructions. Robbie's parents come out. They say it's all a misunderstanding. This is our house. That's our son. It's our nephew. It's our car. In the meantime, Officer Jeffrey Wayne Cotton arrives on the scene. He grabs Robbie's mother, shoves her up against the garage door. Robbie says, "Get your hands off of my mom," and the officer fires 3 times, hits Robbie in the chest. Fortunately, Robbie survived, and he sued the officer that shot him. The lower courts threw out his case, and I was engaged to represent Robbie in the United States Supreme Court. And when we won his case, it was the first time in 10 years they'd ruled for a civil rights plaintiff in a case like that. I'm running for Congress because I believe in the promise of America, that if you work hard and play by the rules, you'll have a fair shot. That promise is at risk and under attack every day when our civil rights are threatened, when the president wants to sue someone for writing a book he didn't like, when our infrastructure is crumbling, and when income in New Jersey is down 6% over the last 8 years, even while income is up nationally in New York and in Pennsylvania. I'm running for Congress because I believe in the promise of America, but for too many people, that promise is slipping away. I hope to talk to you about these issues and how we can keep America's promise for all Americans and not just the privileged few. Thank you.
Save time, I'll stay behind the table for now. Thank you everyone for being here. It's especially great to be here in Springfield. I feel like it's my second home, and the water in Springfield all too often is actually in my home, living on the Water River in Cranford. My name is David Pringle, and I'm running for Congress because I think I have the best chance to beat Lance and hold Trump accountable, given the career I've had and the experience that I have. I've been fighting for you against the Donald Trumps and the Leonard Blants for the last 30 years as a public interest advocate and community organizer, mostly known for my environmental work, but I've worked on a plethora of issues from education funding, fair taxes, campaign finance reform, good jobs, civil rights, women's health care. I can go on and on. I'm not a banker and I'm not a lawyer, but I do not need GPS to get around the district. We have enough bankers, and we have enough lawyers in Congress, and we have enough folks that don't know the district. We need more public interest advocates and community organizers in DC, and that's who I am. I haven't just started talking the talk. I've been walking the walk my entire life. There's not a town in Union County that hasn't directly benefited from my environmental advocacy, from the Highlands Act to open space funding, to stopping the Pilgrim Oil Pipeline, to getting stronger flood protections passed. Because as critical as it is for both Springfield and Cranford and points in between, to get the funding from the Army Corps to do the flood mitigation now, in 10, 20 years, that will all be wasted if we don't get a handle on the work that we're doing from a Clean Water Act perspective. Just last month, I helped kill a $3 billion bailout for PSE&G's nukes. That would be a consumer ripoff. So I've taken on governors and Senate presidents in one. I've sued Exxon in one. I've sued Great Adventure in one. And I can bring that experience and that talent to fight for you in DC. Thank you.
Good evening, good people of Union County and New Jersey. It might be a little ugly out there, but it's beautiful in here. So let me start off by telling you a quick story. My family came from India back in 1986. When they arrived, they had 20 bucks in their pockets, hearts full of hope, and this guy as a 6-month-old baby. They were able to establish a small business, purchase a beautiful home right next door in the beautiful township of Union, put their children through college. And I was able to get my master's in social work. And as a social worker, if there's something to see, you see. Right down the street over here. The family is working 2 or 3 jobs, but not making ends meet. Our veterans who served our nation, but come back home jobless, homeless, and suffering from PTSD. Our senior citizens who literally have to choose between food and life-saving medication every single week. Seeing this over and over, I got sick and tired. So I did what any other honest person would do. I became a politician. Last year, 2 years ago around this time, we had no name recognition and barely any money. By the end of that campaign, we had 1,500 volunteers across 14 states, and we had the strongest campaign to date against Leonard Lance with nearly 45% of the vote. And the reason we were able to do that is we did something radical. We spoke the truth. If you care about America, you care about those families working 2, 3 jobs and not making ends meet. That's why we support a $15 minimum wage. If you care about America, you care that medical bills are the leading cause of bankruptcy in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. And that is why we are fighting for a Medicare for all single-payer system. If you care about America, you care about the tsunami of money that floods the pockets of politicians and drowns out all of our voices. And that is why we desperately need campaign finance reform. Folks, this is not just about being anti-Trump or anti-Lance. The Democratic Party needs to be fighting for the people. Let us bring about the change we want to see in our communities, our nation, and our world. Thank you.
Okay, I'm guessing this one is on. I'm Linda Weber, and I'm running for Congress here in the 7th. About 20 years ago, a woman came to work for me named Sally through a reorganization that happened in my firm. I was thrilled because she was one of the smartest, hardest working people that I knew. And then I found out that she made half of what her white male counterparts in the firm made. Half. And she had no way to know this. But I spent a year and got her 3 raises to bring her salary up to par. These are the fights that I've been fighting for 30 years. We have a president and a Republican Congress who are continuing to take us backwards. And whether we're talking about pay equity or protecting our environment, we see every single day that progress is fragile. And that's one of the reasons I'm running for Congress. Another reason is, this is my home. This is where my husband Mark and I raised our family. I didn't have to learn about Leonard Lance's terrible voting record. Leonard Lance has been my congressman his entire congressional career. I didn't have to learn about the problems in our towns, like not enough commuter parking and empty storefronts. I've lived here and seen those for years, long before I ever considered running for public office. I want to mention something that just happened in the news today, and that is that we found out, confirmation by DHS, that the Russian government hacked into some of our voting roll systems. I happen to have a great background of 20 years in cybersecurity, being one of the first people to launch internet banking applications. It's my 30 years of experience that will beat Leonard Lance this fall. Thank you.
Cheerleaders, an editor of the Dayton Journal, and voted most likely to succeed. I was lucky to have teachers who not only instilled the love of learning, but helped me, empowered me to be able to empower others. I decided to run for Congress for 2 reasons. First, there are not enough women in the rooms where decisions are made. I firmly believe that behavior and conversations will not change until we have a seat at the table and our voices can be heard directly. That was a huge motivator for me. But being a woman is not enough of a qualifier. We need women who will fight and amplify the voices of other women. When I graduated from law school, half of our class was women. But when I practiced law, not a single female partner had a child. I spoke with a friend of mine from law school the other day, and she told me that associates tell her all the time that she's their idol because she works as a partner and has a family. Many of the women in this room made a difficult decision to put their own careers on hold in order to raise their families. This is not progress. It should not be novel that a woman has a career and and a family. There remains a significant gender wage gap, and we still do not have paid family leave in this country. The attack on women's reproductive rights means that women are losing their access to contraceptives and safe abortions. This is not progress. We will never make progress on these issues until they become a priority. The second reason I decided to run is because, like many of you, I believe that our democracy is in danger. And we must flip the House if we're going to stop this assault on our most fundamental values. We need to win 24 seats to flip the House, and CD7 is one of the must-wins. This is an awesome and daunting responsibility. To run a credible campaign, a candidate must have adequate financial resources in addition to having a strong message. And we know that money follows money. But when a candidate burns through cash, it makes it impossible to mount a viable campaign. I worry that a candidate without resources endangers our chances of winning in November. I want to ensure, you're going to want to let me finish, thank you. I want to ensure that the candidate who is best able to take out Leonard Lance has a clear path to do so, which is why I stand here today to endorse Tom Malinowski to be our candidate for Congress in New Jersey's 7th District. He is not a woman. He tells terrible dad jokes. But I've heard him in forum after forum state his eagerness to fight for women and stand up for progressive values in Washington. Sorry. It is time to put changing our country over my own candidacy and do what is best for our shared goal in November. I urge the other candidates up here to consider the consequences of a bloody primary. We need to build a bench so that our wins in 2017 are not one-offs, and that we can continue to win seats for many years to come. We need to make a conscious effort to recruit and support women to run for office on every level. But first, we need to get Tom elected and boot Leonard Lance out of office, which is why I'm asking my supporters, my 2020 friends, to get behind Tom Malinowski. And don't worry, once I get my voice back, I'm not going away. If he would like, I will be out on the trail campaigning on Tom's behalf. There is nothing more important than beating Lance in November, and I will do everything I can on behalf of Tom or whoever our candidate is.
Okay, let's go.
I'm going to work future is truly female. I got into this race to promote our values and do the right thing. I will continue to do that throughout this campaign and beyond. Thank you to everyone who has been on this incredible journey with me. Excuse me. I feel so privileged to have had the opportunity and for all of your support. To my team, thank you for your hard work and dedication.
This has to stop. This is a candidate forum. You can do this later. Thank you.
I would have never gotten this far without my team.
Okay, we're going to
And thank you to my husband, Gary, who has been my rock and my biggest cheerleader.
I apologize for allowing that to go on longer. I was not aware. The next speaker will be Scott Salmon.
Well, I don't want to hold that. I do want to thank Lisa, because she has done an incredible job this campaign. So I just want to really.
My name is Scott Salmon. I'm an attorney and I represent small business owners all across New Jersey. I'm running for Congress because here's what I see. I see 40 million Americans living in poverty. I see minorities being targeted by a for-profit criminal justice system. I see our children being told, you gotta go to college, but when you graduate, if you can get a job at all, you're gonna have a lifetime of student debt. I see our middle-class families struggling to keep their head above water, working harder for less money, and paying more for housing and education and healthcare. I see women and immigrants in the LGBT community seeing their most fundamental rights under attack. I'm running for Congress because I want everyone to have a fair opportunity to succeed, and that just isn't happening. If the true measure of a society is whether we are leaving our children a better life than our own, then the fact is we have to do a better job. That's what this election is about. We don't need little changes. We need big changes. We need fundamental changes. We need to reinvent how we approach housing and education and healthcare and infrastructure and economic opportunities for everyone. The world is changing, and we need a new generation of leaders that is up to the task, not just next year, but for the next 20 years. That's why I'm incredibly excited to be here with all of you and to hear your questions, and without anything left, let's get going.
And finally, Tom Malinowski.
Thank you. Believe it or not, I did not know that was coming. But thank you, Lisa, and thank you all for hearing out a candidate who has spent 9 months now on the campaign trail, working her heart out for values that we all share in this room and that we have to advance as we work to win this race. I'm here because 45 years ago I won the lottery of life. I was a little kid in Poland and had the chance to immigrate here with my mother from a communist country and to have what all of us would recognize as a normal New Jersey childhood. But because of where I come from, I always understood that what we think of as normal in New Jersey and America is actually incredibly rare, incredibly precious. It's something that we have to fight for because we could lose it if we don't do that. With that understanding, in my late 20s, I left home to serve my country as a human rights activist, as an assistant secretary of state under President Obama, fighting to defend our values around the world, fighting for women's rights, for workers' rights, for LGBT rights, standing up to dictators like Putin and Kim Jong-un. I'm running for Congress because everything I fought for, with the flag behind me, is under attack in the United States. White supremacists marching. People who have lived in this country for decades, raised kids here, started businesses here, being deported by DHS. I'm running for Congress because New Jersey is under attack from a tax bill that is designed to hurt states like ours where we have chosen to have better services, better schools, better infrastructure. And I'm running for Congress because I think right here in the 7th District, we can fight back with a unifying message for divided times, one that rallies progressives, but also speaks to Republicans, to moderates who think it's crazy we just added almost $2 trillion to the deficit, who understand that we need to build roads and bridges and tunnels in New Jersey, not the wall on the Mexican border, who believe that family planning and support for women's health is good for everyone in our society. If you want a candidate who has fought for those values all his life, who has the experience to hit the ground running as a leader, as a member of Congress, then I hope to earn your support today and in the primary and in November. Thank you.
The first set of questions are based on the concept of electability, but before I announce the order in which the speakers will speak, the organizing committee for the debate has decided that Ms. Mandelblatt will not be afforded the opportunity to speak, to have questions directed at her, since it appears as though she has suspended her campaign. Okay. As I stated, the first set of questions will be on electability, and my son did not pick the order this time, so I'm going in reverse alphabetical order, starting with Linda. You speak to your long career in banking and technology. Historically, there has been a segment of the Democratic voting population that is wary of the big bank candidate. How do you convince these Democrats that your professional experience is an asset and not something that needs to be overcome?
Well, first of all, I work for a small bank, so we'll start there. I'm really a technologist who has spent some of my career in banking. I actually started my career as a healthcare statistician, and I can, look at numbers and deal with facts with the best of them. I think what we need in our country is governing by fact. And I think all sorts of people, from millennials to seniors, can appreciate that the marketing effort by the right to convince us that opinions equal facts is not the way for our country to progress. So I focus on facts, on principles, and solutions. And my technology background, my cybersecurity experience, this gives me a lot of ability to deal with the issues on a factual basis and actually help our country govern by fact.
I have a follow-up question, more specifically. This is a competitive field of candidates, many of whom have extensive resumes in organizing, activism, and civil service. How do you counter the criticism that in order to hold one of the highest offices in the state, you need civil service or legislative experience in order to be an effective representative?
Well, none of us have legislative experience. So that's number one. Number two, I think that not only my background being frequently for 30 years the only woman at the table, developing skills to come to solution with people different than me, usually white guys. Now, I love white guys. I'm married to one. I'm raising two. But I think that's really important when we look at such a divisive Congress. I have the ability to reach out and work with people. I have the ability to listen. I've had to do it for 30 years as an executive in technology and finance. I also point to my volunteer experience, my leadership volunteer experience. I've been on the board of directors of the American Cancer Society here in New York and New Jersey for many years, and I chaired our leading fundraiser, Relay for Life, here in Northern Union County for many years, raising millions of dollars for cancer research and patient services. So I think my well-rounded background, my understanding of facts, and my knowledge on a lot of issues will serve all of you very well when I'm your Congress member from the 7th District.
The next question is for Scott Salmon. You mentioned that this race is not going to be won on 30-second campaign ads, but rather by going out and engaging with voters. In a district as large and diverse as this, how are you prioritizing which constituencies you are visiting and which conversations to have?
It's a great question. You have to, in a race like this, you have to make trade-offs. You have to choose where you're going to focus and where you're not. One of the things about the 7th District is there are a lot of places that we know that the Democrats are likely going to win, and we need to make sure that we do win in those places. Places like many here in Cranford and Westfield, we feel pretty good that we're going to win here, but we need to put the resources to make sure that we do. The other places that we need to really focus on are the places that we know we have no chance of winning, because those are the places where Leonard Lance runs up the score against us every single time. So we win the places we know we're going to win, and we can cut down on his losses in places out in Warren and Hunterdon, where they've never been asked to vote for a Democrat before, and we can get someone to vote for us. That's going to be enough to push us over. I've been out in Warren and Hunterdon counties where people have truly, I mean, it's literally never had anyone, not just a politician, nobody knocked on their door before. I thought they were going to pull a shotgun on me several times. But when I talked to them and I said, my name is Scott Salmon, I'm running for Congress, they almost were worried. I told them and they wanted to talk. I was able to engage with them, and I was able to convince them that maybe Democrat is who I should be voting for. And that's what we prioritize. We look at the places we know we're going to win, and we look at the places that we know we have no shot, but we can at least narrow it down. Thank you.
And I have the same follow-up question for you. In this competitive field of candidates, many of whom have extensive resumes in community organizing, activism, and civil service, how do you counter the criticism that you need those skills in order to be a representative at the highest levels of government?
Well, so first of all, I would disagree that I don't have that experience. For over 10 years now, I've been working on campaigns from every level, from local to the presidential level, working in Scotts Plains, which is where I'm from, on our local races. I've worked on both of Hillary Clinton's campaigns, President Obama's campaigns, but more importantly, I helped flip 2 other seats from red to blue. Josh Gottheimer is up in the 5th. I led his policy team back in 2016. And I'm in Staten Island back in 2008, which if you know anything about Staten Island, it is as red as you get. The district, and we flipped that seat from red to blue. We elected Mike McMahon there, first Democrat in 30-something years. So I believe I do have that experience. But the second, I think, is being a congressman is about more than just your resume. We have seen plenty of people who have gone to Congress, like Leonard Lance, who have all the experience we asked for. And what we've seen is that they're not necessarily the best representatives. We've also seen people like one of my heroes, Lyndon Johnson. He was 27 years old when he was first elected. He had no experience either, but what makes a congressman good is not their resume, but their judgment, their ability, their open-mindedness, their ability to hire good staff and know when to listen to them, and those sorts of characteristics that really define whether or not someone's going to be a good representative, not how old they are, not what their resume says.
Thank you. This question is for David Pringle. The first candidate on the stage with you declared in April 2017, and you declared your candidacy 8 months later in December 2017. When you were deciding to run and you saw the slate of candidates that were already running, what did you see was missing that you could bring to the table, and how do you plan to make up for lost time on the campaign trail?
I just resigned to run for this office. But in my day job the last 20 years as campaign director for Clean Water Action, in addition to doing the environmental advocacy and campaign work, I staffed our PAC. We have an environmental PAC that works for candidates. We do in-kind contributions. We don't do cash. As part of that, it's my job to figure out who to help and how much. We've been part of the resistance not just this month or this past year, but for the last 30 years, in my professional life, since we were founded in 1972. So in my day job, I'm looking at the races, figuring out what's going on. We've been organizing in all 5 Republican districts and Gottheimer's. Last year, we knocked on over 60,000 doors in Gottheimer's district to help them win. Once we got Murphy elected in 2017, we're looking at the race. And I was looking at all the races. In all the other races, there was more clear, stronger, standout candidates. Everybody here, I thought at the time was good. I've gotten to know them a lot better doing the traveling forums here, and I'm more impressed than I was in November. But no one still stands out. No one's raising the kind of money. No one has the kind of experience that I think is most needed to get the job done. And we don't have enough community organizers and public interest advocates in Congress. We have enough lawyers and bankers.
You actually covered my follow-up question also.
And I didn't answer. I'll try to answer also the how do I catch up?
Oh, okay. You can use that as a follow-up question. That's
okay. I raised more money in my first month than anybody else, with the exception of one in their first month, and I'm raising money this past month at a faster rate than everybody but one in the fourth quarter. Second, I bring things to this race that nobody else can, that frankly the other candidates will dream of. I will have progressive groups doing independent expenditures for me because of the relationships I've built over time, and because they know I mean it when I say I've been doing it for 30 years. It's great that everybody is saying all the things they're saying as candidates. I believe they mean it, and I believe they'll try their best. But I've done it for 30 years. I think you can count on me more, both that I'm sincere and that I have the experience to get it done. Second, I have Republicans and independents running to me. I got a contribution in the mail. On the outside of the envelope, it said, "Hardcore R rejecting Lance to support Pringle." I have a Republican campaign treasurer that's made a very sizable contribution, and the entire family is supporting me, and I think I'm hoping that she'll come on board as one of my treasurers. There's nobody greener than me, with the possible exception of Kermit. And that includes the Green Party. And I raise that because the Green Party has a candidate in this race. And we all know that everybody has a right to run, but we all know that every vote for the Green Party siphons a vote off from the Democrats. And this race is going to be close enough that we can't afford to lose a single vote. I will siphon votes away from the Green Party in a way that no other candidate can. And I actually think I stand a decent chance. I know the candidate. I might be able to get her out of the race if I'm the candidate. I'll try it for everybody, but I'm going to have a better chance if I'm the candidate.
Just so you're aware, I did have a follow-up question. But he answered it in the original question, so that's why I used the second part of the first question as his follow-up.
I'm second.
This question is for Tom Malinowski. In your video, you state that we do best when we appeal to our commonalities, that is, when we focus on what unites us rather than what makes us different. While your video implies an ideal constituency who all want the same thing, we all know that in recent special elections across the country, it is the constituencies of young and minority voters who are turning out the Democratic vote and helping win elections. So how do you foster the ideal of a unified constituency while specifically motivating those voters who are securing success for Democratic candidates and also assuring that their interests are going to be protected or addressed?
Thanks for the question. When I talk to voters around this district, I do hear the same concerns from just about every type of person that I meet. I've met seniors in this district who are anguished that so many young people are either leaving New Jersey or finding it difficult to stay. And I find young people and millennials who tell me you better fight for Social Security and Medicare, for themselves, for their parents, for their grandparents. Everywhere I go, men, women, African Americans, Latinos, they ask me not just about the concerns of their communities, as real as they are. They ask me about North Korea. They ask me about what's happening to the State Department and our country's place in the world. Of course, there are people that we're not going to reach. I don't expect that any of us as the nominee is going to reach the hardcore, the hardest core Trump voters, and we don't need to. But this is a district primarily composed of reasonable, moderate people. Many progressives, many liberals, many Democrats, but also Republicans who, you know, if they were Republican for many years, it's because they thought the Democrats would raise their taxes. And guess who just raised their taxes? A Republican Congress. Republicans who care about law enforcement in this country. And guess who's attacking law enforcement right now? Guess who's attacking the FBI? It's a Republican president. So we have opportunities to appeal to a broad range of voters, and we will have to if we want to win.
Another follow-up question. You speak of achieving results through coalition building. Most negotiators would argue that compromise is crucial to successful coalition building. Are there any issues for you that are beyond the reach of compromise that are non-negotiable? And if so, which ones are they and why?
Oh, there are many. I mean, look, we have to compromise on a lot of things. There was a compromise reached in the U.S. Senate today that allows us for the very first time to increase domestic spending in this country. Democrats and Republicans finally came together on something that wasn't perfect, that paid for the Children's Health Program, that allowed us to pay more for infrastructure and for opiate treatment. But not yet that. And that is something that I will not compromise on. I'm an immigrant to this country. And I sometimes ask myself what it would feel like if right now, I'm 52 years old, DHS agents came to my door and said, you know, we're sorry, but 45 years ago, your mother made some mistake on that immigration form. We're taking you back to a country where you don't speak the language, where you've never lived. You have no place there. And that's what's happening to people in our community. Salvadorans up in Dover who have been here for 25 years under TPS status, and they're facing deportation. It's what's happening to Dreamers if DHS and Donald Trump get their way. That is something I absolutely will not compromise on. I will not compromise on things I fought for, like the fight against torture, which I took part in when George Bush was president, working with Republicans and Democrats. I will not compromise on this country's fundamental values, and we do not have to. Thank you.
You mentioned your campaign's outreach to minority, millennial, and LGBTQ voters. How do you specifically appeal to independent and unaffiliated voters who can make the difference between CD7 swinging blue or remaining red?
Thank you for that question. So in the video, one of the things that I mentioned was the premise of Sally's question, previous question, that some of the constituencies that have helped Democrats flip seats like the 7 throughout the country are voters of color, millennial voters, and frankly candidates that fit that profile as well. So I think that's a big part of it. and appealing to the independent voters, the center-right voters. As Tom said, there are definitely voters on the right that we're never going to reach. And vice versa. I'm never going to vote for Leonard Lance, and I suspect the rest of us on stage and there's more people. But to most of the people in this district, we're all doing the same thing. We're taking care of our families, trying to go to our jobs, get through the day, and maybe our kids will have a little bit of a better life than we do. When I talk about keeping America's promise, it's not just a tagline, it's what I believe. That promise is slipping away for far too many people. As an organizer, an activist, and a litigator, I've fought for the values that help us keep America's promise. From civil rights to free speech, from standing up for the LGBT community and for immigrants, to fighting on behalf of business owners and entrepreneurs, people that remind me of my dad, who started a business in our garage when I was about 3 years old. Those values and that message of keeping America's promise, when I listened to people in all 75 towns in this district, and I made it a goal of mine to visit all 75 towns when I launched this campaign. When I talk to people in those districts and listen to what they're saying, it's by and large that same set of concerns. So it's not about different messages for different people or telling people in Union County one thing and in Hunterdon County another. It's about that core message of keeping America's promise for all Americans and tying that to my experience fighting for American values over the last 15 to 20 years.
I have a follow-up. You also mentioned in your video that the way to flip CD7 was to run young, diverse, progressive candidates. What do you say to the criticism that running a purely progressive campaign is going to alienate the key independent, unaffiliated voters you need to flip?
So that's a great question because it goes to the heart of this word progressive. To me, that reflects the values that we hold of opportunity, of fairness, of justice, which I fought for as a litigator, of basic human dignity. The question was posed earlier of what you compromise on and where you don't compromise. I think we don't compromise on our values, but there are always multiple paths to a particular goal. I think we have to be practical about how we achieve our goals. Progressive in our values, practical in our means. And I'll give you an example. I believe, and I said this in one of the videos, healthcare is a right, not a privilege. We ought to make sure that every single person in this country has access to quality, affordable health care, full stop. Now, there are a lot of ways to get there. If I were in Congress and a Medicare for All bill were presented to me, I would vote for it. If I were in Congress and a public option bill were presented to me, I would vote for that. I think it's very important to figure out ways to achieve our goals and not get quite so hung up on the way to get there. And that's the balance between being practical while holding true to progressive values.
You are the only candidate on the stage who was previously run against Leonard Lance. Do you plan to appeal to voters differently this time? And if so, what does that look like? And a second part to that question, since the November 2016 election, do you feel that the district has changed significantly?
So when we ran 2 years ago, nobody expected to even touch Leonard Lance and flip this district. Again, we got nearly 45% of the vote. We didn't have any Democratic Party establishment support, no D-Trip, no progressive organizations, quote unquote, supporting our campaign. We showed up, we knew what was at stake. We showed up and we did the work. The fact of the matter is, we went out, we spoke to people across the district. And if I may share a quick story with you, those Trump voters, they got the lawn sign, they got the bumper sticker, you ring the doorbell, lo and behold, they got the Trump t-shirt on too. You give them your 30-second pitch over their head. All they care about, Democrat or Republican. You say Democrat, get off my lawn. But anybody who's canvassed knows you don't quit that early. I'm not a quitter either. So you guys, how do you feel about the role of big money corrupting our politics? How do you feel about paying taxes in a system that's rigged against you? How do you feel about Paul Ryan trying to cut Social Security and Medicare? How do you feel about Chris Christie at the time? Thank God he's gone. Who wants to gut your pensions? All of a sudden, guess what? They all become Democrats. The issues that we are talking about are not Democrat or Republican. They are about the soul of America. That is what we are fighting to take back. And the fact of the matter is, this works. It works throughout the country. This time around, the difference is we have all of you.
I'm going to ask you the same question I also asked You state in your video that we need to be unapologetically progressive. What do you say to the criticism that running a purely progressive campaign is going to alienate those voters, that you need to flip the district?
Again, those were the progressive values that worked. That's why we got as far as we came. In Union County, and we were out in conservative places like Berkeley Heights and New Providence and throughout the district. The fact of the matter is, here in Union County alone, out of 85,000 votes that were cast, we lost by only 639 votes. Again, we could win. We need to be unapologetic because, folks, the stakes are too high, the time is too limited to settle for what the Republicans are putting on the table. They are pitting kids who need health care against kids who are in need of a pathway to citizenship. We don't compromise on that. The 7th district is a progressive district. We've been told otherwise. But take it from someone who's run before. Let's go out to those communities. Let us speak to the issues. Look, politicians change. I remember Barack Obama was not for LGBT equal marriage rights. 3 years later, he was. What changed? Public opinion. We fought. We brought about the change. It's about time people in Congress put on their pussy hats. It's about time we represent the values that are needed in this district for America. When we get to Congress, it is now Peter Jacob who's going there. We're going to take back this seat and give it back to its rightful owners. That's you, the people.
Thank you for surviving round 1. We're going to take a few minutes break just refill the waters. Be about health care. It is not surprising that as Democrats, you all have very similar platforms and very similar positions on health care. You have all highlighted Congressman Lance's dismal record on providing access to affordable, quality health care. You have highlighted his many, many votes to repeal the ACA under President Obama. And you've also pointed out the path Speaker Ryan gave him to vote against various Republican proposals. You all support universal access, albeit with some nuances to how to make this happen. So the question will be posed to all of you, and again, it will be in random order as selected by my children. On day 1 of your healthcare policy decision-making, what would be your first priority in healthcare? We would like you to choose one of the following areas and describe the specific actions that you will take from a legislative perspective. The topics are prescription drug affordability, stabilizing the ACA, ensuring access to women's health care, including reproductive health, or public health issues such as the opioid crisis, cancer, obesity, and maternal and infant health mortality. Scott Salmon, you are up first.
Okay, I will choose stabilizing the healthcare crisis for $200.
Should have brought a board, I'm sorry.
The fact is, since 1976, adjusting for inflation, the cost of healthcare has gone up by 214%. It's out of control, and most of that has come from the last few years before the Affordable Care Act came into play. Now, I worked for a congressman, Mike McMahon, who was seat flipped from red to blue. I worked in his office in 2009. I worked on healthcare policy right when we introduced the Affordable Care Act. So I remember what we tried to do, what we wanted to do, and one of the biggest things we wanted to do that we couldn't do was introduce the public option. The public option, for those of you who don't know, it is essentially Medicare that anyone can buy into just like you would with your private insurance. What it does is it forces private carriers to actually compete. They have to reduce waste and inefficiency if they want to survive. That's a good thing. Competition is a good thing. It's going to force them to reduce lower premiums, lower deductibles, and increase benefits for everyone. That's one of the big things that we're missing from the Affordable Care Act in 2009. It started to stabilize costs a little bit. When you look at that 214%, it starts to taper off, but it was still too much. I mean, we could have done a lot more if we had the public option back then. Most of the reason that we don't have it is because of Joe Lieberman, but that's been one of the biggest things that I think people. Because so all the issues that you mentioned, well, if you can't afford your health care to begin with, and you can't afford coverage, then everything's going to be out of reach. You're not going to be able to get the drugs that you need. You're not going to be able to get the access to women's health that you need. All that sort of comes from stabilizing those prices, and that's what we're doing first.
Follow-up question. What specific bills would you craft to create this public option? What we really want to hear is what this public option would look like from you. Is it federal or state administered? Is it tax subsidized? All of the different permutations that are available, what would it look like for you?
That's a great question. I always love the question was how does it actually work, and that's always a fair question. With the public option, essentially what you do is you open up Medicaid to anyone that wants to purchase and do it. They have formulas that they figured out when this happened in 2009 for how much it would cost you to buy into Medicare if you aren't already over 65. And so it does those premiums that you're paying to Medicare, which are going to be significantly lower than what you're likely already paying right now for your private health insurance, is what's going to pay for all the extra resources and people that they need to run it. Medicare currently operates at about 2% overhead. 98% of the money actually goes towards benefits. Private carriers spend about 13% on overhead. That goes to every single TV commercial that you've seen advertising some drug. It goes to their CEO executive pay. Like I said, they have to reduce those costs. That's going to lower prices for everyone. But as far as the public option itself goes, that just comes from opening the doors to Medicare to anyone, not just those who are over 65.
Thank you. Any question for you, Tom? Do you need me to read the options, or?
Thanks. I'm going to be a bit of a rebel, because you actually don't have to choose one thing if you're a member of Congress. And there's going to be, our to-do list is going to be incredibly long. Almost 2,000 people in New Jersey died of opioid abuse, overdoses, in 2016. Obviously, we have to do something about that. Everybody talks about it. The Trump administration refuses to fund it. Women's health saves access to contraceptive care, support for women's health programs save lives. It helps women, it helps men, it helps families. Of course we have to fight for that. But I would agree with Scott that the most urgent step that we need to take at a time when the Republicans are playing games with health care, trying to whittle away the Affordable Care Act one slice at a time, would be to pay those subsidies to make sure that lower income people can still get reasonably affordable health care under the ACA, rather than watching more and more and more and more people lose coverage and be left to the mercies of the marketplace in which they are not protected. So that would be my first priority, but I would try to do all the other things too.
I'm glad you selected when I was training as a litigator, so I was going to make you give me one.
I knew you would.
So that was my follow-up question.
Okay. I answered it.
Yes,
Great.
okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. Same question.
So, my number one priority would be stabilizing the ACA, but why? Look, all of us up here, we get these talking points from the Democratic Committee in Washington, and they're fine. They're actually very well written and well researched, but they're also written for 50 states, and some of them are kind of general. So one of the things I've been doing in this campaign is reaching out to thought leaders who are working on the front lines of some of these issues, like civil rights or reproductive rights or environmental issues, or in this context, healthcare. And I spoke with a gentleman who, if I may digress for a minute, by the way, said, I voted for Leonard Lance every time he's been up for anything, and this November I'm going to vote for whoever the Democrat is in the compliment about it. So, that doesn't have to do with healthcare, but I thought it was worth mentioning. And he pointed out that coverage through the ACA is important. Why? Because that's how we bring down prices. The ACA expanded access to reproductive and women's health care. The ACA brought down prices, and by expanding coverage, we were able to do more things to treat opioid addiction and infant mortality. So expanding access to the ACA is important because it affects all of the other issues that you talked about. So that would be my top priority, but not to the exclusion of the others, but because that's precisely how we make progress on the other issues.
Get it now. I want you to commit to an actual priority. That way you avoid a follow-up question. Linda?
So much like my compatriots up here, I also believe we need to offer the Medicare public option on the exchanges. People often ask, I mentioned I started my career as a healthcare statistician. I actually was one of the first people also to analyze the Medicare HMO regulations when they came out 20 some odd years ago. I'm pretty well versed in this part of policy. We need to offer the Medicare public option. However, people often ask me, what will you compromise on when you're in Congress? Let me give you an example. We don't compromise on principles, but we can compromise on implementation. And this is a matter of not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. If we are ready to offer the Medicare public option, that's leveraging an infrastructure that already exists, right? People use it today, the technology's in place, the rules are in place. This is about actually getting something done. So with Republicans possibly still controlling the Senate, and obviously still controlling the presidency, we need to possibly have to compromise on this. And my compromise would be, let's put it on the exchanges that only have one other option or are really struggling. Because this takes the profit motive out of it, it holds our insurance companies accountable. My master's degree is in public policy analysis with a specialty in healthcare policy, and my former advisor actually is one of the national health economists that's working on pricing models for putting the public option on the exchanges. So I'm a huge fan of that, but not to the exclusion of women's health care. If we don't have the right to choose and control our own healthcare decisions for our bodies, we will not get the other things that we deserve, like pay equity and other elements for women.
Thank you.
I have no illusions when we get to Congress and we still have to deal with the potentially Republican president. Yes, we need to protect the ACA, but everything that you mentioned there, whether it is ensuring our senior citizens don't have to choose between life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness based on the fact that they got to choose between food, rent, and life-saving medication. The fact that women have to clear it with their employer to get contraceptions and birth control. That's just ridiculous. The fact that medical bills are the leading cause of bankruptcy in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. The solution is simple, and in fact, we have it right now. It is called Medicare. You improve it, you expand it, and you give it to everybody. That is the vision of the Democratic Party from Franklin Roosevelt to Ted Kennedy, and this now. Folks, we need to be brave and bold, and 60% Americans and counting and a plurality of Republicans support this. A public option was buried 8 years ago, and that's where we need to leave it. The CBO, the Congressional Budgeting Office, and the Kaiser Family Foundation says it is not going to work. If we truly believe on this stage that healthcare is a human right, like every other developed nation, like when my mother gave birth to me in the state of Kerala in India, where healthcare is a human right, she walked out just paying $100. We need to pass a Medicare for all single-payer system. I'm glad our Senators Cory Booker, I'm glad Bonnie Watson is behind this. This must be done. The future of America depends on healthcare as a human right.
You spoke in the videos about simply changing the eligibility age to 0 for Medicare. Would there be a transition period, or are you talking about moving everyone in the country to Medicare in 1 year? If there is a transition, for how long, and what measures would you put in place to mitigate the shock to the economy and the systems in place as a result of attempting to move wholesale to Medicare for all.
I'll tell you what is a shock to the system, because this won't be. Giving people health care is not a shock. The shock to the system is when you rev up our military budget by another $80 billion to a guy who should not be having his finger on that button. That's a shock to the system. Yes, it is simple. The solution is simple. Everybody's going to talk about complicated policy, you got to do this, that, and third. The solution is simple. It's 65 for people around my age. Bring it down to 0 to solve it. Within the next 4 years, from 65 to 55, then 0 to 18, have every child covered. Don't worry about them. When you bring it down to 55, it encourages people to retire early, potentially sell their homes, let those millennials take those jobs. They will buy your homes from you, and then you squeeze it till we get down to 0. Who gets health care last? Me. I'm losing on this, folks. But the fact of the matter is, this is what we need to do. It is the only solution to health care, our health care crisis in America. We got to do it. It is the vision of the Democratic Party. Let's act like Democrats.
Some will call this a cop-out, but I don't think so. I'm going to vote for all of the above, and here's why. I'm a progressive, but I'm also pragmatic. I want to be like Senator Booker, where the action is. I'm not about tilting in windmills, I'm about building windmills. When it comes to health care, if it's a 218, 217 house, the options on the table are going to be very different than if it's a 250, 185 house. So some things are going to be very easy to do, some things are going to be impossible. I want to focus on the things that are 50-50. So if there are enough folks fighting for opiate funding, I'm not going to be there. I'm going to be fighting for Planned Parenthood, because that's close. That's a core value. I'm not willing to choose until I know what the real politics on the ground are. All of those issues are critical. I'll leave it at that.
I'm not going to let you get off that easy. You have to pick one. If you have to show up on the legislative agenda, you have to pick one.
I'm going to go with preventative health care. The best health care is health care you don't need. Planned Parenthood funding is a great example of that. I have friends and family that have personally benefited from it when I was in the legislature fighting for funding for Planned Parenthood when Christie cut it, and a third of the Senate Budget Committee, when they were young women, personally benefited and had Planned Parenthood as their primary health care provider.
Thank you. That was the second part of the evening. The third part will involve environmental and infrastructure, and this time we're going to go in actual alphabetical order. My kids didn't pick this one. Peter, on the environment, you say that there is a lack of will in Congress to go to green energy sources because fossil fuel interests have bought out our government. Do you have a realistic plan for limiting corporate donations and PAC money for federal elections to reduce the impact of special interests?
Absolutely. First and foremost, we need to unite as a nation to pass a constitutional amendment that says that corporations are not people and that money is not speech. But second, one piece of legislation we could pass almost immediately is what 5 municipalities right here in the Garden State have done, and many throughout the nation have done. And it is called the American Anti-Corruption Act. We need to stop political bribery. We need to put an end to secret money. The Koch brothers have bought out everybody in Congress about it, every Republican. There's a reason that they're so stupid to deny the realities of climate change and ignore what will be the potential United States and planet that we leave for our children. We need to put an end to that. We need to address partisan gerrymandering, and we need to restore the voter's voice. This is things that we could do today. But we need to take the leadership examples of other organizations that are leading the way in addressing our broken campaign finance system. The fact of the matter is the fossil fuel industry is bailed out by the taxpayers by about $50 billion every year. We give subsidies to pollute our planet. And when Leonard Lance takes money, then ignores the will of the people and fast-tracks pipelines, we need to be out there fighting the Penn East pipeline, the Pilgrim pipeline, and asking for justice in places like Linden, where ExxonMobil has ruined and decimated the land. We need 100% renewables by no later than 2035. That is why I support the OFF Act put forward by Representative Tulsi Gabbard.
Thank you. In your video response, you discussed infrastructure in terms of public transportation and broadband internet access. How do you see the difference in NJ's infrastructure and mass transit needs between the eastern part of CD7 in and around New York City and the western part of the district, which relies less on the New York City commuter routes? And how would you prioritize these infrastructure needs?
So I think this issue is one that applies across the district, and it takes different forms. Look, there are roads and bridges, frankly, many of them are historic in the western part of the district, that are in dire need of maintenance. So infrastructure, and some of these are old rail bridges, as it turns out. The old train line out there was cut when they put Route 78 in. So some of these issues are cross-cutting. In the western part of the district, I met with a woman in Frenchtown who has, if you've ever been out to Frenchtown, it's on the Pennsylvania border, and if you cross the bridge into New Jersey, there's a bookstore. A woman named Caroline owns that bookstore, and she can't do online banking because the internet is so unreliable that she can't get online. There are parts of our state in Warren County where there are parts of the state that don't have any internet access. And all of that falls under the umbrella of infrastructure. I support a real investment in our infrastructure, not this sham that we got from Donald Trump. In Donald Trump's plan, he puts up a big number, but that money comes from private companies, and you'll be charged what's basically a tax, user fees and tolls and other things, when private companies are trying to make a profit. I support federal government investment in a comprehensive infrastructure plan for our district, for our state, and for our country overall, which would include all of the above. Infrastructure, meaning broadband internet access in places that are underserved, meaning transit in places like this where we don't have single-seat ride in much of the eastern part of our district, and improving our roads and bridges and tunnels that are literally falling apart. So I don't think it's an either or we can do.
Thank you. Tom, in your video, you said that you will work to reform the system that hurts the environment for the benefit of big companies. As a freshman representative, what realistic, concrete actions, please name 3, would you take in your first 6 months in Congress to deliver on this promise?
Why not 4 or 2?
I like odd numbers.
I used to be I was a speechwriter for President Clinton, and we had a rule that things could only come in 3. So I appreciate that. I'm not sure if I'll live up to it here. So what I was talking about in my video was an experience that a couple of us have had going out to the western part of our district and meeting with folks who are facing the prospect of this pipeline, the Penny's pipeline, being built through their backyards, through their neighborhoods, through their homes. And we've been to demonstrations, and I've attended meetings of landowners, and it's a remarkable thing because you've got environmentalists there who are passionately opposed to subsidies for fossil fuel and who want us to move to a clean energy future. And you've got folks who don't want their land seized by the federal government to build a giant hulking piece of metal through their backyards. I don't know how many Republicans or Democrats are in those rooms. It doesn't matter. All of those people are going to vote for a candidate who is going to protect them from that. Now, I believe Governor Murphy is going to take the right steps with respect to pipelines and a lot of other environmental issues. But what I've said with respect to that issue in particular is that we need to reform the federal system, the FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, which allows big companies through self-dealing to greenlight projects like this pipeline, which are not needed for our economy and bad for the environment. So standing up for constituents in this district, that would be the first thing that I would do. Thanks.
Reforming FERC is going to take more than 3 legislative actions, so I'll keep that. That's fine.
All right. Thank you for that out.
Dave, you referenced in your video Long Island Pork Barrel project for military plane manufacturing. What would you say to a fellow congressperson whose constituent jobs or general welfare rely on projects that you consider pork?
President Trump talked about folks immigrating from Norway. If I was Norwegian and I'd look at this country and this president, I'd wonder, why would I want to immigrate there? I reference that because the Scandinavian countries, they embrace change. labor unions, and the corporate board. And change means change. It means jobs change. But their societies don't abandon those workers. They stay in the company, and for every reason there's a new change that means less workers. They're developing new technologies and that need new jobs. And so they're training and transferring, and there's a social safety net. So we need to do that. I'm glad that Tom has showed up at Penn East a few weeks ago, and I'm glad that Peter's talking about 100% clean energy eventually. I've been fighting for those things for 30 years. I was at Penn East from day one. I was opposing Pilgrim Oil before I even realized it was in my backyard, because we don't want those things in anybody's backyard, not just your own backyard. I got helped pass the Clean Air Act in 1990 that provided a just transition for coal workers that were going to be out of a job, because that law got rid of the dirtiest coal being burned in coal-fired power plants. I got drinking water amendments passed in 1996. I got Governor Murphy to commit to 100% clean energy, and those are the kinds of new technologies that will create the kinds of jobs so that we can have a just transition. In 1920, there were a lot of horse buggy manufacturers that went out of business, and there were also a lot of car companies that went into business. We switched from buggies, we went from about less than 10% to 90% cars in 20 years. We can have that same kind of transition if we stop investing in 19th century technologies and focus in 21st century ones. Those are the kinds of job transitions we as a society need to happen. The scientists have said we can clearly do about 100% by 2050. We should push the envelope and shoot for 2035. Like JFK, if you don't shoot for the moon, you're not going to get there. What about infrastructure, sorry?
It was about, what would you say to a fellow congressperson with respect to their infrastructure projects that you would consider poor? I'll give you 30 seconds.
Sure. Our infrastructure is in horrible shape, from pipelines that have lead, to that leak, to our power grid, to one of the things we need to do to get 100% clean energy is to do a smart grid. There is so much our roads, our bridges, our transportation system. If we invest in these things, there will be more than enough jobs. So will some things fade away? Yes. But we can transition, provide that safety net, and people go where the jobs are, and the jobs will go where the people are.
Thank you. In your video response, you only discussed train commuting, but there are many of us who take buses or drive into New York City. Despite New Jersey transit train lines and bus systems, the Route 78 corridor still lacks options for mass transit. As a freshman representative, what realistic, concrete actions would you take in your first 6 months of Congress to bring funding projects to New Jersey to address those needs?
Sure, that's a great question. You're right, it does go beyond just the train lines. 20,000 people within this district alone commute to the city every day. Our roads are wildly deficient. 42% of our roads are considered deficient and cost you and every single driver out there in the state of New Jersey nearly $2,000 last year in repairs and wasted time. So yeah, it definitely does go beyond just trains. What I support is $1 trillion investment into our infrastructure, and I think that's the kind of thing that we're going to. It's not just going to be myself. I'm going to be relying on all the other congressmen to rally behind, and I think that's something we're going to be able to get behind, because right now President Trump, as Galvin mentioned, even President Trump has gotten behind a $1 trillion investment for infrastructure. Now, he disagrees on how that money should be spent and where we should get the money from. He wants to get it from, as Galvin said, from private companies and do it that way. I want to see it done from the federal government. I want to see us investing in our infrastructure like we did during the New Deal. But I think that is an issue that we're going to be able to get people behind. It is a bipartisan issue now. There is room for compromise on that. I think there's almost a sliding scale. I don't know if we can get people to agree behind, but I want to see us taking the best of every country. I want to look at the super efficient airports of Singapore for Newark. I want to see us taking the high-speed rail from Japan for our train lines that go throughout the district. I want to see us taking the hydroelectric power. I mentioned energy before in the environment. I want to see us take that hydroelectric power from Switzerland. And I want to see us do all these things and do $1 trillion investment to our infrastructure, because we here in New Jersey know more than probably anyone else just how bad we need the upgrade.
In your video, you spoke about an innovation zone and the needed infrastructure improvements that are required in order to make that a reality. Can you elaborate on how you would make this innovation zone a reality and what infrastructure improvements are required in your mind to make this, I'm sorry, I apologize, to make this a reality? I'm going to say one twice.
So an innovation zone is an area, it could be multiple locations, where we as a country or as a state or together offer tax incentives, other kinds of credits and opportunities for startup companies or new product development and kind of in an incubator kind of perspective. Doesn't have to be just incubator, but that's a good way to think about it. We seeded our technology leadership in this district about 40 or 50 years ago to the West Coast. I live right down the street from Bell Labs, and I'm happy that Nokia finally put up Nokia Bell Labs because the previous two owners did not. And there's a great history here, and there's still a lot of terrific technology here. Half of what you have in that phone in your pocket was developed in this district. We need to bring those jobs back. We need to incent development of new technologies here in the district, and it could include incentivizing clean energy technologies, for example. We need to stop fossil fuel subsidies, for example. But this is an opportunity to allow our kids that are going and getting STEM degrees elsewhere to actually be able to come home and have a job. And it really addresses good-paying jobs in the district as well. In terms of the infrastructure that's needed, we need some high-speed networking development in the district in order to accommodate this better. And we've seen it in some other areas, so we have models, whether it's New York City or even Jersey City or Buffalo, we have models that we can work from as well. But this is really important to continue to develop the economy in the state of New Jersey and specifically in District 7.
Before the candidates deliver their closing statements, I have a question that will be asked of all of you in random order. The residents of CD7 need a representative in Congress who from day one will be their voice and their advocate. They need a representative who will address the concerns that they are regularly and repeatedly agonizing over, an advocate for democracy and voice for their principles. The question is, if you are elected, what 2 issues will you tackle immediately with concrete legislation to show your constituents that you are fighting for them? And it can be broader than the issues that were addressed today. Tom, you're first.
There are so many issues we've discussed today. Healthcare is a human right. Infrastructure. There are others that we haven't. Gun violence prevention. Many others. But if there was one thing, I'll do 2, but I'll tell you my number 1 priority as a representative of this district. It would be to replace and repeal and replace this horrific tax bill that the Republicans have foisted on this state. Because of the direct impact that it has on families and homeowners in our district through the loss of deductibility of state and local income taxes, because of the immense addition to the federal debt that's going to be passed on to our kids and grandkids, and it's going to make it harder to pay for that $1 billion infrastructure plan that we all want, and because it is a terrible statement of our values and priorities as a country. And in fact, I'm not going to wait till my first day after I'm sworn in. The day after I'm elected, I'm going to contact the other, hopefully more than 24 Democrats who've been elected in swing districts around the country. And come up with a class of 2018 plan to have real tax reform that's fair to the middle class in this country. Number 2, defending our democracy. You mentioned that this is something I feel personally about because I spent the last month of my tenure at the State Department dealing with this Russian thing when we realized what had been done to us by a foreign power and what the implications were. We had not taken a single step in the last year to protect our electoral infrastructure, to protect our financial system against dark money from overseas, to protect our social media against propaganda. There are good ideas on all those issues. I have proposed some, And if that legislation isn't passed by the time I'm there, I will introduce it. Thank you.
So, I mentioned before knocking on doors all around the district. And when I knock on the doors, I get, I think that, as Peter said, 30 seconds is usually about right how long you have to actually talk to them before they slam the door shut on you. The reason you only have 30 seconds is because behind that door, you can see their kids running around. You can see them trying to get them to eat dinner or put them to bed. You can see a stack of medical bills that are sitting at the table. And what very rarely, surprisingly rarely, almost comes up is President Trump. That's not what most people, I think, in this district are focused on. What they're focused on are their kids and their bills and how they're going to, what they're going to do about their job, how they're going to get a better job. And it's those day-to-day things that affect people the most, and that's what people are focused on. So that's what I want to focus on. You asked for two, so I'll give you the healthcare, public option that I talked about, my infrastructure plan. Those are my two things because, frankly, without our health, nothing else matters. And I don't think we can get to any of our priorities if we aren't safe and secure. If we can't get to work on time, well then we don't have a salary. We can't do any of the things we want to do. Those are the things that affect us most in our day-to-day lives, and I think that's the priority when we make the Congress.
So, Joe Biden once said, "Don't tell me what your priorities are. Show me your budget and I'll tell you what your priorities are." If you look at this tax bill, it's a terrible statement of the priorities of the Trump-Lance agenda across the board, on health care, on the environment. I mean, the tax bill opened up the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge to drill. So if I were elected, my number one priority would be real tax reform for the working families in our district. And there are a lot of ways to pay for some of the tax investments through the tax bill that we need to make in education and infrastructure and so forth. And here's one of my favorites. When companies pay or are investigated by the government for breaking the law, and then they pay fines, penalties, or settlements, they get a tax break on the money that they paid for breaking the law. I'm going to shut that down on day one, and this is going to revise tax bill and put that money into the investments that we actually need. So that's my number one priority. But my number two priority is something that I've talked about throughout this campaign that I call Democracy 2.0. Look, it's not enough for us as Democrats to say that we hate Donald Trump, and believe me, I do. But the trains weren't running on time 2 years ago before he was president. They're not running on time today. We had a student debt crisis 2 years ago before he was president. We have that crisis today. Incomes were going down 2 years ago before he was president. They're going down today. On all these issues, the playing field is tilted. There are 3 constitutional amendments to right that balance that we need right now. Number 1, a campaign finance reform amendment that makes absolutely clear that corporations are not people and money is not speech. Number 2, a privacy amendment guaranteeing all individuals a right to privacy in their personal information and in their private lives. And number 3, a real voting rights amendment that gives every citizen a right to vote without interference from partisan gerrymandering and voter suppression. And that would be the second part.
Peter?
So it's always interesting when you meet politicians, and when you're at your social service organizations, the first thing they say is, "We're going to create jobs." And you know what response you get from the clients you serve? "Great, I have 3 of them." The fact of the matter is we need good paying jobs. Leonard Land sits on the House Energy and Commerce Committee, an old committee that's very powerful, yet he has brought no investment back at home. We have some of the leading solar panel integrators in all the East Coast, right in the 7th District, and they are ready for investment. We, I believe, could be a leader in solar energy right here. We need to work with my friend Phil Murphy and bring that investment from the federal government to be leaders in that area. We're also home to the telecom industry. Verizon has a headquarters here. We have Celgene, we have Merck. We are a headquarters to the pharmaceutical industry. We have the financial capital and we have the intellectual capital. But yet our kids either come back home with no opportunities or they're in Boston, New York, or LA. I believe we could become a leader, an example to look at. Not another Silicon Valley, but we could do our own thing. But the fundamental problem is the next Jonas Salk, she is sitting at a desk job because of a pre-existing condition. The next Elon Musk, who's ready to launch an actual person in a Tesla into space. is sitting at a desk job crushed under the weight of student loan debt, which is at $1.4 trillion. Wait till that bubble bursts. We need to invest in people, and that is why we have put forward the People's Platform that will ensure a democracy and an economy that works for each and every single one of us.
We got confirmation today from DHS that 21 states were targeted. The voting systems of 21 states were targeted, and they're pretty sure 3 were penetrated. Yet we allow the states to choose how to develop and manage their election systems. We need to focus on cybersecurity as an issue, as an infrastructure issue for our democracy. If our voting systems are subject to penetration and attack by foreign governments, let alone some people inside of our own country who might want to mess with things, our democracy will fail. We need to incentivize states to protect their state voting systems. That needs to be a key priority. They're ready to go after us for our 2018 elections. These midterms will be targeted by the Russians and possibly others because they've now opened the door and let some other bad actors around the country see that it can be done. So at the federal level, we need to have some guidelines and standards and possibly even investment to help the states safeguard their election systems. The second thing is repealing this GOP tax scam. My clients are family-owned businesses. They talk to me every day about the issues that they see with this and how they're going to be hurt. I will fight for tax reform that actually grows our economy, that actually helps those who need it, and most importantly, does not punish New Jersey.
I want to compliment the organizers, and I really mean that. I think the questions tonight have been much better, detailed, and more, and having follow-up, and I think we're enjoying the conversation. So thank you very much. Now that I've been nice, I'm going to add a little criticism. I think the premise of the question is a bit off, and one of the questions for the video was too. Let me just quickly explain why. The question of the video was Leonard Lance has voted against repealing Obamacare, and I think we should be focusing on the dozens of times he voted to repeal it, not the one time he voted not to. On this one, the question suggests that a freshman congressman introducing legislation is meaningful. It's not. A freshman legislator is not going to get legislation passed. It's going to collect desks. Actually, these days it won't even do that. It's going to be in the internet law somewhere. But there are many other things a freshman congressman can do, any senior congressman can do, much more important than passing legislation, given the chance of any legislation getting passed. Using the bully pulpit of the office, oversight hearings, when you can get them formal ones, informal ones in the district, working the press, working the grassroots. These are the kinds of things I've been doing for 30 years. So when I get into Congress, I'm not going to need on-the-job training. The skills and the experience I have in the state legislature, and to some degree in Congress, are immediately transferable. And I will be using every single one of those skills to get the job done for all the issues that we all care about, that I've been fighting for. One of the first things is using the bully pulpit to stop pennies. FERC is an outrage, and we can kill it in part because of the work we've set up already done. Same thing on Pilgrim Oil. When it does come to legislation, it will be, my primary focus will be on climate for several reasons. It brings all the other issues together. Public health, education, jobs, the environment, and we can get it done. Thank you.
So the candidates will have 2 minutes for closing statements, and we're going to start again randomly with Linda.
So thank you to the Union County Democratic Committee. Thank you to, let's see if I can get all of them, Action Together, Summit Area Indivisible, Westfield 2020, NJ7 Forward, and Cranford Rising. Thank you all for doing this and inviting me to be here tonight. I really am honored. And thanks to all of you who spent this rainy night here with us. It really is my privilege. I'm gonna go off my prepared remarks, much to my campaign managers and communications director's chagrin. But we need to elect a representative We need to choose one of us who can actually beat Leonard Lance. That person, yes, needs to have a backbone when we get to Congress. We need to be strong Democrats. Most of us agree up here on most of the issues, and probably agree with the majority of you. But let's think about who we can actually put up against Lance that can beat him. If money was all that mattered, Jon Ossoff would be in Congress, and Hillary Clinton would be in the White House. You have to have a profile that can win the district. We saw in Virginia that 11 of the 15 seats that were flipped in 2017 were flipped by women. We saw in New Jersey in 2017 that turnout by women equaled turnout by men and women combined in 2013. And we also saw in our own local towns across this district, women flip Republican seats to Democrats. Highbridge, Peapack, Gladstone, even my red town of Berkeley Heights. We need to elect someone who is from this district. We need to elect someone who can win. I'm the one that can beat Leonard Lance. I have the experience, 30 years in technology. I also have the background and the roots here in this district to defeat Leonard Lance. I appreciate your support. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thank you to the organizers, and thank you to all of you for spending your evening with us yet again. It's so energizing to see so many people in a room like this. I got my start as an organizer mobilizing millennials to get involved in politics. I spent a lot of time in rooms like this with people like you, and it takes me back to my roots. I think it's clear that any candidate up here will make a better member of Congress than Leonard Lance. The question is who's the best candidate to take out Leonard Lance? I suggest that it's the candidate that presents the sharpest contrast with Congressman Lance. Leonard Lance is a hard-right conservative. I'm a progressive. Leonard Lance is a career political insider. I'm not. I'm an organizer, an activist, a litigator by training. By all accounts, Leonard Lance is a very nice person. I'm a jerk. And look, this campaign is going to be nasty at times. I know that Leonard Lance has his bag of tricks, but I've done stand-up comedy, and if I could take hecklers at a comedy club, I could take anything Leonard Lance would throw at me. For the last 20 years, I've spent my life fighting for American values, from free speech to jobs, from immigrants and LGBT issues to infrastructure, and that's the experience that I'll bring to Washington. It's time for us as Democrats to dream, to think big, and have the positive agenda, and not just say that we're running against Donald Trump. We're at a moment in our history where our country is extraordinarily divided. And it was at a similar moment about 50 years ago, on the night of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., that Bobby Kennedy gave a speech in Indianapolis. He was campaigning there when he was running for president. And in that speech, when he was scheduled to get there, the police said to cancel the event. They said it was too dangerous. But he went ahead with the event, and he spoke for 5 minutes without notes from the back of a pickup truck. And he gave the greatest speech in American political history. Senator Kennedy said, "In this difficult day, in this difficult time for the United States, it's perhaps well to ask what kind of a nation we are and what direction we want to go in." The question before us that's precisely the question that's before us today. We're as divided as we've ever been in our history since that night nearly 50 years ago. And in this difficult day, in this difficult time for the United States, it's perhaps well to ask who we are as a nation and what direction we want to go in. I'm running for Congress because I believe in the promise of America, and I hope to earn your support so that together we can keep America's promise for all Americans and not just the privileged few. Thank you.
Many, if not most of you, have heard me tell the story of how, in 1937, a 27-year-old Lyndon Johnson won his campaign for Congress by outworking a crowded field. So instead, I want to tell you another story of another political hero of mine. Gallagher mentioned Bobby Kennedy. I want to talk, though, about John F. Kennedy, because in 1946, John F. Kennedy was 29 years old and running for Congress, roughly the same age as me. People tend to think that he won because of his family name or his money, but the truth is, he won because of his ability to inspire people and his army of volunteers. Kennedy wasn't the captivating speaker that he later became, but he inspired people because his message was about the future and how we can create a better world for all of our children. His slogan was, "A new generation offers a leader." So when people met him, they inevitably wanted to help because he was young, he was energetic, and he represented that future. He had more volunteers than anybody had ever seen. But wouldn't it matter, all these volunteers that he had, if not, all the hard work that he had put in wouldn't have mattered if not for his volunteers. That's what we need here in the 7th District. We need a candidate who represents the future and is focused on ensuring that all of our children will have a fair opportunity to succeed. As Kennedy would later say, it is our energy, faith, and devotion which we bring to this endeavor that will light our country and those who serve it, and the glow from that fire can truly light the world. Now, I am not Jack Kennedy, nor am I Lyndon Johnson, but I am Scott Salmon, and I believe that it is the passion and energy of the people here in this room that will carry us to victory in November, and that is the future that I am focused on. My campaign has knocked on thousands of doors from the most remote areas of the district to its most populated. We have more than 700 donors from 35 states, contributing an average of just $25 a person. We have over 100 volunteers of all ages from all across the district. We have an army. That is why, if we choose the right candidate, Leonard Lance cannot beat us, no matter how much money he raises. He will never outwork us, and he can never match our determination, because he is the past, and we are the future. But only if we pick the right candidate, the one that has the vision to lead us forward into that future. My name is Scott Salmon, and I am that candidate. Thank you.
Running and continuing the work that needs to be done to fight for the America we have yet to become. I started this race knowing that I may not have a chance to win, but I had to put forward a fight back in 2016, and it's coming clearly through in 2018. People said, you can't do it. But yet, we had the most bang for our buck, the highest return on our investment. We only raised $320,000, half of which came 5 days to election through 3 emails from Bernie Sanders. And yet, we got nearly 45% of the vote. What does that say? That all the consultants and everybody who's pushing money, if you could inspire people to come out, that is what matters most. I do not want to get to Congress and spend 8 hours a day making phone calls or be pulled out of committee to say, hey, there's a wealthy donor right here. You better answer that call. I want to go there and do work for you. And I'm not naive about this. And that is why we need to fight for a government that is representative of the people. Last week, we heard a Congress applaud to keeping open a facility that detains people who are perceived as terrorists. Some of them so, but it's a torture facility. We heard them applaud the demonization of immigrants, people like myself. We heard the president refer to clean coal as beautiful, if clean coal is not an oxymoron to begin with. But come back about 80 years ago when Franklin Delano Roosevelt said, we need a new Bill of Rights. We need a right to education, a right to health care, a right to be free from unfair competition, a right to a fair wage. Today we put that forward. 20 years later, John F. Kennedy stood in an audience like this at Madison Square Garden, fighting for health care for seniors, which would end up becoming Medicare. Imagine having to fight for that. He looked out to the crowd, and we look up to him today because of his inspiring words and courage. And he said, all the revolutionary movements of the Franklin Delano Roosevelt era we take for granted today. But I refuse to rest on the accomplishments of past generations. I refuse to shrink in what is our responsibility in this time. What we are talking about today will be considered the ordinary business of government in our children's lifetime. Folks, the stakes are too high and the time is too limited to settle for anything less than bold, progressive policies. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, so much for coming tonight. For everyone who still thinks that this may be a low turnout midterm election, look at this room. We are going to be out there in massive numbers. We're going to take back the House. We're going to take back the Senate. When I was just 5 years old, this is one of my earliest memories of life. I remember my mom pushing a wad of cash across the table into the hands of a corrupt official in the little town in Poland where we lived in because she wanted a passport to come to America. And I was not a political person at 5 years old, but I had the sense to understand that there was something wrong, there was something creepy in this situation, that I was living in a place where some people had all of the power and they could kick the crap out of the rest of us who had no power. There was nothing we could do about it. And that memory is why I'm a Democrat, because our party is the party that has always stood for people who don't have the most power in our society. We are the party that built Social Security and Medicare, the party that fought for the rights of working people to organize in this country, the party that fought for women's rights, the party that fought for marriage equality. And that is the core of our message, and it has to be the core of our message in this election. And think about what else we can say now. Thanks to Trump and the Republican Congress, we can now say, we are the party of fiscal responsibility in America. We are the party that defends law enforcement in America. We're the party of family values after they put up Roy Moore in Alabama. We are the party of patriotism. We're the party that believes that our men and women in uniform should be protecting this country and not parading in front of the President of the United States. We're the party of science. We're the party that does math in the United States Congress. And that is the message that I want to bring to every part of this district if I'm lucky enough to be your nominee in November. And if I am, I will have one more small advantage, and that is I will be Donald Trump's worst nightmare in this respect. There's no way in hell he is ever going to come up with a rhyme for my last name. Except maybe Malinowski for the house ski, because Lance has had his chance. Thank you very much.
I'm in this race to the end, and let me tell you why. We are stronger as a party, and we are better as a party, and our chances are better in the fall, when we let voters decide, not politicians and big donors in back rooms. We will be weaker in the fall if we are not tested in the spring. None of us have run anything like this race that we're going to see in September and October. We need a candidate who's battle-tested. I have been living New Jersey politics for 30 years. If that's not battle-tested, I don't know what is. I am the only candidate that is standing up for what is right. Colleen Marr, who's not even supporting my candidacy, is running for Union County Chair. I'm the only candidate that has stood up for her. She's been not supported by the old boy network repeatedly, and that's not right. And I'm letting the chips fall where they may, because that's what we need to do as a party in the campaign. The Koch brothers, Donald Trumps, and the Bannons of the world will stop at nothing in this fall. We need a candidate who has taken a hit and can bounce back up. I am the only candidate that has done that. I've lived in this district my entire life. I go to church where I was baptized. I've coached basketball against Springfield, and my daughter is now being coached by a daughter of Springfield, Jackie Hooper, the niece of the current Springfield mayor. my family has struggled with the same issues that your family has struggled with. Folks have talked about women sacrificing to stay home, and they have. My wife has sacrificed to go to work. I've sacrificed so that I can stay home, and we've just flip-flopped because in a crazy moment she gave her my blessing. She gave me the blessing to do this. But the bottom line is, in contrast to that experience and what I can do for you in Congress, we have 3 candidates that are good folks that are too young to have that kind of life experience. We have 2 others that don't have any of the political experience I just laid out. And the 6th has never lived in the district, hasn't lived in New Jersey for 30 years, and is vulnerable for that. Right or wrong, that is a huge vulnerability in the fall. So it really comes down to this. Who are you going to trust more? Somebody who's been fighting effectively for you for the last 30 years on the issues you care about, that needs 0 on-the-ground job training, or folks well-meaning that haven't done it. So it's time to fight back. I hope you will be with me, and I ask for your support. Thank you.
Can we get a round of applause for all the candidates? That those of us in the audience and those of us watching are as much a part of this process as they are, because it is our job to safeguard democracy by educating ourselves about the issues and the candidates. But it's also our job to remind the candidates that getting elected is not a prize. It is not the end of a campaign. It is only the beginning. You go to Washington to represent people. You don't go to Washington to represent interests. We, the people, give you the right to represent us. And winning the right to represent your neighbors and friends is a privilege. And we ask, as residents who are not running, that you always remember that and you honor it. Because if not, it is our responsibility as residents and as citizens to hold you accountable and to demand transparency and to demand accountability and to demand responsiveness. Because the days of being passive and silent are over. And before we conclude for the evening, I want to remind everyone that the videos that they all made, the candidates made, that formed the basis for the questions are available on the Union County Democrats website. I assume that they'll also be in some of the groups. Thank you so much for coming, and please have a safe ride home.